when I finished uni, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
I was like, I'll give that a go and see how I feel,
At some point, I realized you need to make a change in your career.
You need to have that conversation with yourself and see where you are.
I'm still not sure which path I want to choose after this.
Hello, I'm Kritika Adatia and I'm a chartered accountant. I now support accountancy students through their training. And as an educator, I'm regularly up close and personal with some of the common issues people face while studying for and sitting their accountancy exams. So in this series for the ACCA, I'm chatting to experts about strategies we can all use when facing some of life's challenges. This week, we're looking at careers. As we all know, an ACCA qualification can open up so many doors. But what if you're not sure what you actually want to do? How do you know if a certain job or career path will suit you? And what techniques can we all use to try and take a step in the right direction? This is On Your Marks, because you'll never know until you try. Choosing a career path can feel like one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make, but it's important to remember that it's not set in stone. Your journey can take you in different directions, just like mine did. I started out in accountancy, driven by the desire for financial stability, something that was important to me as someone from an immigrant family. But more than that, I genuinely enjoyed it. Debits and credits just clicked for me. However, it wasn't long before I realised what really excited me was sharing my knowledge and helping others grow. That led me to take a somewhat unconventional leap from practicing accountancy to teaching it. I spent several years as a tutor at a well-known college guiding students through their accountancy studies. Eventually, this passion for education and technology brought me to an edtech company that offered accountancy courses, where I worked as a learning designer. This path eventually led to my current role with ACCA. Looking back, my career has been anything but linear, and I certainly never imagined I'd be hosting this podcast. But that's the beauty of it. I'm just one of many accountants who have found unique ways to use their skills and knowledge to craft a fulfilling career. So to dig into how we can make the best of our careers, I've got Helen Tupper with me. She's a career coach and author of the book Squiggly Careers, as well as the founder and CEO of Amazing If, an organisation that helps everyone feel more satisfied with their working lives. So Helen, I guess I'll open with a question that's linked to what I've just said. You're an author of a book, Squiggly Careers. So what exactly is a squiggly career?
Yes, thank you for having me on. It's great to talk to everybody. So a squiggly career is really the opposite of the ladder-like idea for careers, which has been around for such a long time. And ladder-like careers say that we're all supposed to pick a profession. So at some point, we've got crystal clear clarity about what it is we want to do. And then you progress by going up the ladder, step by step, you collect promotions. And the assumption is that we're all motivated by the same thing, becoming more senior, getting to the top. And Squiggly kind of recognises that career ideal that we presented people with for a very long time doesn't really reflect the reality of work, which often feels quite knotty and sometimes a bit uncertain and a bit unpredictable. It's not linear like a ladder. So it doesn't really reflect our reality, but it also doesn't reflect people's individuality. We're at work for a long time. On average, 41 years is how many years we spend in our career. In our waking hours, work is the thing that we do the most. So this idea that for the entirety of our career, everybody who has a career is motivated by the same thing really doesn't reflect our individual desires, needs, and wants from work. And Squiggly is about giving people to develop in the direction that is right for them so that they have careers as individual as they are.
So it's basically saying that everyone's career path is individual. And actually, in my intro, I mentioned that I've had maybe a somewhat squiggly career in the sense that I have moved around a bit, and it has. I know certainly when I moved around, there were elements of stress and anxiety that was involved. So why is it that when we're choosing a career or a career path that there's an element of stress and anxiety involved?
Well, first of all, it's identity, right? So you attach your identity to your career. So when you're doing something different, that represents a change in who I am and how people see me. So that's That's always a little bit unnerving when we're in that situation. It's why quite a lot of people will play it safe, because that's what they know and that's what they're known for, and that feels easy. It's just not necessarily very fulfilling. But the other thing that often happens during times of change, and that's either change that an individual is driving, or sometimes change happens to us, a restructure, for example, a company acquisition, a new manager, all that kind of stuff. In those moments of change, our confidence gremlins tend to grow. And gremlins really are about the beliefs that hold people back. It's fears about failure. It's worries about not knowing enough. It's feeling like, oh my gosh, will they still like me in this role? And these gremlins grow over time. They feed in times of change, and they hold people back. And they're very normal. Everyone's got them. I talk to people at all levels of organizations. Even senior people have got confidence gremlins. But we have to sort of acknowledge that it's normal to feel nervous during times of change, but we don't want to let gremlins get in the way of our opportunity to achieve.
Do you know, that's really interesting, because that's actually helping me understand that the confidence gremlin that I felt when I was moving from sort of, teaching to then sort of the ed tech space, where I then became a learning designer, and almost feeling like, okay, this is slightly different to what I was doing in the classroom. And that really did make me feel a little bit anxious. So thank you for actually spotlighting that. That's exactly what I was experiencing. I'm just thinking about the satisfaction that people get from their work, and how important is satisfaction for our work, and how important is it that we feel happy in our careers and in the workplace as well?
It is important. What we're trying to connect with when we're thinking about being happy at work, because that can sometimes sound, I don't know, a little bit trite, like go love your job, all those sorts of things that we say to people. And we want to get practical about it so that people can do something different if they're unhappy at work. And the way that you really start to take this ideal of happiness and take control of it in terms of your career is by understanding what your values are. So values are the things that motivate and drive you. They're the things that make you you. And these are very individual. They're largely informed through our upbringing. So you mentioned, that you went into the profession in the first place, perhaps because of your upbringing and this kind of idea that this felt like a secure, stable, successful career. And I would imagine that some of those things are still important to you because of your upbringing. And we all have values. What we're trying to do is understand what are your core values. So these are your strongest drivers. And we're trying to connect those to your career. So connect what makes you you to what you do. Because when you do that, you make better decisions for your development. I reduce the risk of getting swayed by shiny objects like qualifications, job titles, certifications, levels. They're all really important, but they're not necessarily what drives somebody. The driver might be about achievement. It might be about identity. It might be about, like for me, for example, one of my drivers is about freedom. And when you connect your values to your career, you can make decisions that are going to make you happier over the long term. So if I'm faced with a job with a very fancy job title that doesn't give me any freedom, then that fancy job title might feel brilliant when I post it on LinkedIn, but 2 weeks later, I'm not probably going to feel great in my job because I haven't got the freedom that I need. And it's your values that make you happy over the long term. So I guess point one, it is important. The way we get to what makes us happy is by having greater awareness of our values and using that awareness to make sort of choices in terms of our career development. My second point is just about reducing the risk, which is it's unrealistic to think you're going to be happy every day at work. So don't beat yourself up if you're not. There are other things going on than just you and your work. There's other people's work. There's what's happening in the world outside of work. So what we're trying to do is give people a sense of control, but not an unrealistic expectation about every day feeling amazing. And also, we don't want people to get all of their fulfillment from their work, because this is where you risk something called enmeshment, which is where you become what you do. I am this job, this company is me, my identity is connected to this organization. And what happens there when you kind of have this enmeshment situation is when there are ups at work, you feel amazing. You're like, everything's brilliant. And where there are downs at work, there's organizational change, maybe there's pressure on profits or whatever's going on, you feel awful. It affects you at a very, very deep level. and we lose a little bit of resilience when we become what we do. We just over attach to our work. So that's, don't seek all of your fulfillment from your work, but take action where you can to be happier.
I want to circle back to something you said about values and that sort of being important when we're thinking about our career. So how does an individual actually go about finding out what their values are? Is there some sort of strategies or mechanisms for uncovering those?
Yeah, there's lots of exercises that you can do. I think one of the easiest ones for me to talk through is asking yourself a couple of coaching questions. So the first question, maybe I can ask you. Maybe we'll do it live.
We can try.
So if you were going to describe to me what's most important to you about what you work on, so you're designing your perfect day at work, what are some of the things that you'd be doing?
Knowing that it's going to make an impact. And I suppose for me, it'll be the students that I'm making an impact on.
Okay, so making an impact working with students. Second question, in terms of who you work with, so your perfect team, just describe to me some of the behaviours, the environment. What does it feel? You're working in your perfect team with the people you love to work with. What are they like? Give me a sense of what that would feel like for you.
So I'd like to think I'm quite an energetic person in the workplace and I have enthusiasm about some of the ideas that I want to bring to the table. So my ideal team would be someone that can have a similar level of energy, is willing to also bring ideas to the table. Those that I can just get along with on a personal level as well. I find it easier to work with people that I can just have a chat with, and we don't have those sort of like guards that we're in a professional environment sort of thing. So yeah, I'd say those are important things for me.
Okay, so we've covered the what you like to work on. We've covered the who. Now let's go with the where. It's your dream organisation. You may already be in this, but let's just imagine it's one you are creating. It's your dream organisation, your dream culture, your dream environment. Just talk to me about where you're working. What does that look like?
So a lot of my current role is working remotely. And I must admit, I do quite like that because there are often times where I do just need to focus and get things done. But at the same time, I do get energy when I go into the office, when we're perhaps brainstorming, seeing colleagues to build those social connections. So I guess what I'm getting at is the hybrid kind of situation, which I'm fortunate enough to already have in my current role.
Brilliant. Okay, so what I've done, and these are questions that people can ask themselves. So I've asked you 3 versions of a values-based question. What's most important to you about what you work on, who you work with, and where you work? Now, in your answers, I was writing them down as you were saying them to me. A couple of words that you said more than once. This is the thing to sort of look and listen out for. So you mentioned the word energy 3 times. You mentioned the word ideas twice. You also mentioned the word brainstorming. I would probably put those 2 together in a little cluster. You also mentioned connections, social connections, like feeling connected to 3 times. There were a couple of other words you mentioned, enthusiasm, impact, students, but for me, listening to you, the strongest themes were around an environment where there's lots of energy, one where people are contributing ideas, and one where people feel connected to each other. And so if I was to hazard a guess, and there's other exercises we could do, at this stage it's just clues we're collecting, I would hazard a guess that your values are something around the ideas, something around the connection, and something around the energy. There may be a few more, but those questions give you a good starting place. How does that, if you're listening to me sharing them back, do those words feel like you?
They do. And that's just so brilliantly summarised. I hadn't even noticed the amount of times I used the word energy or social or connection. So you've given something really useful for our listeners there in terms of what they can do just to kind of establish their values. So no, thank you so much for that. Newly qualified accountants, they tend to have so many options available to them once they qualify. And I'm just thinking about when I qualified and decisions that I had to sort of make. Do I want to work in practice? Do I want to work in industry? I obviously opted for the education route. I mentioned that I found my calling working with others and passing on my knowledge. But what really can accountants be thinking about in terms of figuring out what it is that they should be doing next? I know you mentioned the values, but when they're making decisions about what to do next, are there strategies and tips there?
Yes, absolutely. So I think very often we put ourselves under quite a lot of pressure to make the right move. And the reality is the next move you make is probably not going to be the last move you make for most people. And I think we have to see the career moves we make as something on a continuum and just kind of part of a journey, and take the pressure off it having to be this perfect position. Because when we place those expectations, not only does it make the decision even more difficult to do, it means we go into the roles and it needs to be perfect, because we've added all this pressure to this move that I've made. And so we want to take some of that away. I would say the first thing to look for, there's two things: learning and fit are what we need. So let's just talk about learning first of all. The skill for everybody in careers, wherever you work, whatever you do, the skill that we all need to be demonstrating and developing is learning at work, because that is the thing that helps us to be resilient. The more we are in environments that enable us to learn at work, and the more that we are doing jobs that keep us learning at work, the more resilient we will be in our roles. Organisations that limit learning by level limit people's career development. We need to be learn-it-alls in organisations that embrace learning. So I think one of the first things when you are looking at positions is, will this help me learn? Will this role help me learn? Will this organisation help me learn? Because if it doesn't, you'll be holding yourself back. So you really want high learning roles, high learning cultures in companies. Second thing, when we're in positions, we want to do a little bit of a filter of fit. And the things to look for here are, first of all, values. So are the things that motivate and drive me likely to be fulfilled in this role, in this team, in this company? So if I think about one of the moves that I made, so my values are freedom, growth, energy, and achievement. They are the four things that make me me. So when I'm looking at decisions about what I do, I always look at them through the lens of my values. And that led me to go and work for Virgin, which was an amazing fit for my values. I had freedom. I got to launch a new business. I had energy because everyone was just doing random things at their head office. It was amazing. I had loads of achievement because I got to do jobs and launch companies that I'd never done before. And I grew as a manager, and I grew with my own skills. So the things that made me me were very fulfilled in that position. And my values led me to look at it in the first place. So the first thing is a values fit. The second fit is a strengths fit. So, and this is, I can hear this in your decisions that you're probably intuitively doing this, or maybe you were explicitly doing it. Values are the things that, strengths are the things that give you energy that you want to be known for. So this is different from just thinking about strengths as the things that you are good at. Because people who are kind of doing these exams, that you'll be good at lots of things. You'll be organized, analytical, logical, critical thinking. You'll be good at loads of different things. But you might not enjoy using all of those abilities. Lots of us have things that we are good at that we don't necessarily really enjoy doing. And the problem is, if other people see that ability as a strength, they might match you to an opportunity that you can do, but that you just don't really enjoy doing. I see it all the time, people stall in their careers because they do jobs that they can do that they don't really enjoy doing. There's sort of 3 layers of decision here. So what work gives you energy? What strengths are you using when you're doing that work? And of those strengths, what 2, maximum 3, do you really want to be known for? So let's say for me, I want to be known for career development. I want to be known for making a positive impact. And I want to be known for making things bigger and better. Like, they are me. So whenever I'm looking at roles, the talent, that the sort of titles actually become less important. What is most important is the talents, the things I want to be known for, are what that position needs. And it's a very different way of scanning your opportunities and really sense checking. Is this really a good fit for me? Or is it just something that's going to look good on LinkedIn? Or is it something that my parents might approve of? Or all these other things that influence our decisions?
So are we saying, Helen, then that, when we're in a job role, we want to make sure that we always carve out time for learning as well? And the reason I'm pointing out the responsibility on ourselves, not just the organisation, is because I'm just thinking about sometimes in my own job role where we get so bogged down in the BAU as is, and therefore we may not have time in a week to focus on the learning. So are we saying that as an individual in whatever role, if your company might not be advocating for learning, that you actually carve out time for yourself to make sure you're doing a bit of that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And so I guess the first point is learning is critical for everybody to do in their career. Really, really critical. Otherwise, we just don't stay relevant. With the level of change that is happening in organizations and with skills, like there's something called the half-life of skills. Basically, our skills don't last very long unless we keep learning in them. So learning is important for everybody. The issue is no one has time to do it because of how we currently look at learning. So we currently look at learning as, well, I need to go on a course. I need to create a day, a month to go and learn. And that just feels impossible because I've got all emails and meetings and people need me. And so where am I supposed to find this magical day for my development? And so when we look at learning like that, learning feels really hard to do. What we need to start to think about is, how do I add learning in to what I'm already doing rather than add it on? Oh, I need a magical day to do it. Adding it in looks like asking for feedback. So at the end of this today, I could ask you, the first time that we've talked about this together, what worked well in terms of how I related Squiggly Careers to your profession, and what would be even better if next time I had a conversation with somebody about it. And you could give me a little bit of quick feedback. That is learning. I could reflect on this conversation and think, how clear was I? How concise was I? How effective was I in getting my message across? What one thing would I do differently if I was going to talk about this next time? I would bring in learning through my reflection. And there are so many small ways that we can add learning in rather than it feeling like this big thing that we've always got to add on. And that's not to invalidate the courses, qualifications, longer moments of learning, but it is recognizing that if that is all that learning looks like and all that we appreciate for learning, it often never feels like it gets done. And your development goes on the bottom of your to-do list. And that is certainly not what we want for people.
Also want to touch on something you said about job titles. Now, in the accountancy profession, if we're thinking about a traditional accountancy career, it tends to be hierarchical in the sense that you start off as a junior, you might move on to be a senior, you might then move on to be a director. And social media sites like LinkedIn, which I think you alluded to in a point earlier as well, you post, hey, I've just been promoted to financial director, and that seems to be a thing. And I'm just thinking about, how can we stop people chasing the titles, and or even comparing themselves to the titles they see of their colleagues and friends on social media sites like LinkedIn?
People's talents are more important than their titles. So I am not saying, oh, don't care about becoming a senior or a director or anything. I'm not saying don't care about that. If this is the profession that you love, then that's part of the profession. What I'm saying is, don't be limited by that, and don't be restricted to your identity being all about that. Because what happens then is you end up with a homogenous group of people who all share quite a similar job title, and it's very hard to differentiate them. That's where you knowing what you want to be known for, your talents almost standing out more than your title, is really important.
Sometimes when we make decisions about our careers, it tends to be driven by money and financial reward. Is that sometimes the overriding factor when people are? Should it be factored in, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, gosh, there's quite a few parts of this. So there's the reality of life is expensive and we have to pay rent and mortgages, and some people have childcare, and there's commuting costs, and we all have a reality of how much it costs to live our life, and therefore we need roles to be able to pay us sufficient amounts to be able to do that. So I do think there's a reality of, when people are looking at positions, pay is important. I think the challenge that I see is where pay becomes really dominant in people's decisions. So I always think there's sort of a line of, what do you actually need? And that's a different line for all of us. I have 2 children, so I have some childcare costs, I have a mortgage cost. There is a certain level of income that I need as a baseline for my work. Beyond that baseline, there is a degree of choice. And what's driving that choice is often where the values come in. So, for example, one of my values is freedom. So the more money I earn, the more freedom I have to work in a way that works for me and to manage my week and make decisions and invest in my learning, all those kind of things. So the bit beyond the baseline for me funds my freedom. The bit beyond the baseline for other people might fund their status or their significance or their sense of achievement. And there's no judgment on what that is. But I think it's really important for people to know what is the driver behind wanting more beyond the baseline. Because sometimes you just seek roles that pay you more money, when actually, if you think, well, why don't I seek roles that give me achievement? It's not all about the money. I could potentially accept less money if it gave me more achievement. So I really don't want to do that thing where people don't acknowledge the importance of pay. It's not just a motivator. It is a need for people. But I think beyond the baseline, you do need to think about, why do I want more? What does more actually mean to me? And if more isn't possible, then how do I still get the thing that I need, the stability or the achievement or the status or the freedom, whatever that thing is for you? Because then I think you just unlock more opportunities that aren't necessarily requiring this pay threshold that we've often created for ourselves in terms of positions.
Just a question I wanted to ask you, moving away from what we've been discussing, but thinking more about, sort of technology and where we're at in the technology space. Obviously, artificial intelligence is such a thing now. Everyone's using generative technologies. There's loads of headlines about AI taking over all jobs, and that can be quite scary. What are your views on artificial intelligence and some of these technologies and the impact it's going to have on careers, and what should we be doing as individuals to perhaps prepare ourselves for it as well?
Well, I think sometimes the headlines around it are, AI is going to take my job. And I think AI will change a lot of people's jobs. But I think the bigger risk is that somebody who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. I think that's the bigger thing that we really need to think about. People that are confident and competent in using AI to complement their role. And I think the important thing for people to do here is not to think about, how is AI going to steal my job, but to actually think, how is AI going to help me to be better? And to almost like deconstruct your job. It can help you to be quicker and lots of different things. Have a bit of a play. Talk to people about what they are using and how it's helping them. Like, learn through others that might be slightly further ahead in the learning journey. And don't be afraid of it. I honestly think being afraid of it and worrying that it's going to take your jobs is the worst thing. Embrace it, experiment with it, talk to other people about how you're using it. You'll be seen as a proactive adopter, and the ways that it will complement your career will be advantageous for your development.
Could you give us 3 top tips or strategies when thinking about careers?
Yeah, maybe I'll do it in the form of quotes, because I find quotes are quite memorable. So my first point would be to run your own race. So really avoid the trap of comparing your career to somebody else and then designing your development based on that. It is unlikely to make you very happy, and it might take you down some routes of your direction that aren't going to be very useful. So just run your own race would be my first one. My second one is challenge your limits, don't limit your challenges. I think, look, I could say, I'm not good at finance, I'm not good at maths, and I could rule myself out of certain things. But actually, if you challenge your limits, well, how could I get better? Who do I know that could help me to learn? I think that is how we will keep growing. So challenge your limits, don't limit your challenges. And then my third piece of advice is to speak what you seek until you see what you said. Because I often see that people hold themselves back because they keep their career ambitions and aspirations to themselves, because they worry, well, what will they think about me? This is different to what I want to do today, or I don't want to sound silly, or what if it doesn't work out? They keep it to themselves. And it is really, really hard for anyone to help if you keep these ideas and ambitions in your head. And talking about it doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. But sometimes people say, oh, that's a great idea, and it gives you a bit more confidence. Or sometimes people say, oh, I know someone who's done that. Let me introduce you. And you've suddenly got a new connection. But none of that happens if you don't talk about it. So Speak what you seek until you see what you said. So there would be my 3 bits of advice for everyone.
That's incredible advice. And I'm just going to say it out loud to myself just so it ingrains in my mind. So you've said run your own race. So being an individual, which we spoke about earlier. You've also mentioned challenge your limits. So that's almost working through maybe the chatter in your own mind. And then obviously speak what you seek. So actually saying out loud to others what you might want to do, just so that you do end up doing what you're saying. Have I got that right? Thank you so much, Helen. That's been an incredible conversation.
Thank you so much.
And that's it from this episode of On Your Marks. Thank you, Helen, for chatting with me today. For more information about ACCA exams, you can go to www.accaglobal.com/exams. See you next time. I'm Kritika Adatia, and this has been On Your Marks.